Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. I hope everything's fine for you. The weather's good and life is returning slowly to normal. Obviously, things are going on in the world, but today we're specifically talking about programming, which is our safe haven for everything, isn't it? Now, there's quite a few attendees. This presentation is going to be live. Quite often we do videos and things like that, but today we thought let's risk it and see if we can make everything go wrong by doing a live presentation. The guy that's speaking at the moment is me, Ian Barker, and I am an Embarcadero Delphi MVP. I can be reached on my Gmail address, which is ian.barker@gmail.com. And if you use Twitter, I use Twitter quite a lot, then follow me as @punctuation. And if you want to find out where my websites are and things like that, then go to about.me/Ian Barker. It's all on the slide there. There is a questions window. If you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, there's a little questions box. Go in there, type your questions, and we'll do the best to answer them as we go along. Jimmy's here as well. He's answering some of the questions today whilst I drive. What's happening?
Yes, and I put the link in for Ian's blog post that's down at the bottom in the chat window as well for everybody, and I'll be answering questions. And I will chime in one bit here, and I may from time to time, but while it is Windows 11 focused, if you're not on Windows 11 yet, a lot of this stuff will also apply for Windows 10. Nothing, well, there's some of the stuff you're going to cover is Windows 11 specific, but most of it should work on both Windows 10 and Windows 11.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually quite a lot of crossover between Windows 10 and Windows 11, so it's quite handy. The main bits about Windows 11, I'll highlight them as we go along. Okay, so let me just get my presentation view working. The agenda today, we're going to talk about the challenges of Windows 11. Not everybody has got Windows 11, even the ones that wanted it. And the reason is that Microsoft started to get a bit picky about what they want the hardware to be like. If you're not familiar with this story, you must be hiding under a rock or something somewhere. But basically, Windows 11 uses some of the more secure hardware on the system, and also wants a very specific CPU type that's no older than a couple of years. If you're about 2 years old on your computer, you've probably got the right CPUs and right kind of hardware structure behind it. But if you're anything older than that, then like myself, you've probably got one or more machines that can't use Windows 11. My main development machine's super up to date, so that's the one I'm talking on at the moment, and that can run Windows 11. But even a Microsoft Surface device, which you would think, coming from Microsoft, that would be all well and good, but that can't run it. And in fact, it can run the preview version, but not the real version. So we're going to talk about the little challenges that come with Windows 11, because there are some reasonably significant changes to the way the UI works, and some of them do affect the way your programs work and the way your programs need to look. We're also going to talk about how we can do it the hard Microsoft way, and that's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek poke at them. But Microsoft, I've got a lot of respect for Microsoft, and I do use Microsoft products for lots and lots of things. But when it comes to development, despite the involvement of C# in a lot of the programming, the way to do some of these UI things with Microsoft tools is actually quite hard, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then we'll talk about how we do it the easy way. And of course, as a Delphi MVP, you won't be surprised to find out that I think the easy way is mostly with Delphi. And then we'll go on to talk about the wow factor. And by wow factor, what I really mean there is how to make your programs, go very, very modern and have all the extra features that users can expect. And at the end of it, we'll have a little Q&A session. But as we're live, you can ask questions and I'll answer them as I'm going on. I'll also say hello to a few people, like Patrick, who is a frequent flyer, as we should say. He's an MVP as well. Bonjour, Patrick. He's French. Actually, he's Belgian, I think. And Roland as well. So there's a few people asking questions. But like I say, we'll deal with them as we go along. Challenges of Windows 11. Well, Windows 11 is beautiful and also slightly terrifying for some of the users. In my day job or my regular programming job, I deal with all sorts of customers. They could be anything from what Americans would call mum and pop shops, so they're small family companies, and to larger businesses that are blue chip companies, and everything in between really. So some very large companies with thousands of employees. My experience has been that probably a third of those people have upgraded to Windows 11. Of the corporates, many of them are trying to resist the change, but have gradually gone to Windows 10, and especially as Microsoft lean very heavily on these people to stay away from older versions of Windows, like Windows 8.1. I think I've only ever seen one in the last 3 months, maybe. But they go to Windows 10. So most of what we're going to talk about here does apply to Windows 10 as well. But Windows 11, the main changes that are immediately visually recognizable for users are things like the fact that the toolbar or the taskbar is suddenly centered. And so many people comment and complain about the taskbar being centered. Actually, you can go into settings on the taskbar and you can make it go back to the left again if you want to. You don't have to have it centered, but it does make it look a little bit more like a Mac. I'm sure that's just accidental by Microsoft, but that's one of the things it does. There's some very cool new types of Windows behavior. And in particular, one of them is the incorporation of what used to be available in a thing called Power Toys. If you've not used Power Toys, Google it and you'll come across it. And this is things like window snapping and a few other cool things as well. The window snapping allows you to align your programs up so that you have one application, one part screen, one on another part screen, and lay them out and tile them nicely. It's as we grow more accustomed to having larger monitors, and it's typical for people now to go to 27-inch monitors and 32-inch monitors, and I'm sure some of you people out there being developers have got even bigger than that. You start to get a lot more real estate with a lot more pixels that you can push around with the graphics cards. And so things like this new type of Windows behavior is incorporated into it. So if on Windows 11 you point at the maximize button, you'll see the little menu that appears in the bottom left graphic on there, where it allows you to snap your applications. This is going to become more common. And one of the things you have to do with your applications is support that. We'll talk about this in a minute, but the good news is if you're using a recent copy of Delphi, particularly Delphi 11 Alexandra, it's already doing it, especially with VCL, it starts doing it straight away. And the other thing is new UI standards. The new UI standards are really about how the transparency works or doesn't work, removing some of the extra noise that appeared with Windows 8 and carried on really into Windows 10. Now, if you want to do it the hard way, you can use Microsoft's UI platform, okay? And I'm going to tell you how you can do that in Delphi in a moment. But Windows UI 3 or WinUI 3 is it used to be called Project Reunion. And the reason they called it Project Reunion was it was taking all of the old universal UWP platforms and combining them with Windows 32, which is the platform that really you're talking to when you use VCL, and combining them so that everything would work under this new WinUI 3 banner. And the thing about WinUI 3 is that, like many of the platforms before, it's a declarative platform. Now, what do we mean by declarative? Well, by declarative, we mean that you define the controls on the screen by literally writing code. The code that you write is XAML, which is a form of XML. And so if I wanted to create a screen, I would describe a form and say, create a form and have that as the outer part of the XML. And then the inner part of the XML would have a button, for example, an OK button. And I would have an opening tag that said button. And then in there, I would have a property for that opening tag that says caption, and the caption would be some text. As Delphi programmers, this is not the Delphi way of doing things. Behind the scenes, Delphi, if you've ever looked at a .dfm, you'll know that if you turn that onto a text DFM, you can open that in a text editor and you can see all of your UI expressed as a bunch of properties and objects. Behind the scenes, Delphi is basically maintaining that for you. This WinUI 3 is almost as if you've got to type in that set of forms for creating the user interface yourself. And I really think that's the hardest way of doing it. However, notwithstanding that, we do actually have a demo of doing that. I'm not going to demonstrate this today, but if you go to the Embarcadero blog, there's a link there, and actually my blog post later will have the blog post summary for this presentation will have all these links in there as well. But if you go there, you'll see an article by Marco Cantu that tells you how to get the WinUI 3 demo from Get It, which is the project manager in Delphi. Download that, install it, and then you can actually use WinUI 3. What I will say is that I tried that myself, and I'm not a slouch when it comes to programming, and I found it incredibly difficult and long-winded. And I'm not just saying that to have a dig at Microsoft, but it was download this package, download that SDK, put this DLL in this place, and off you go. You can run the UI. Now, in Marco's defense, he has said in previous webinars, this will become better, and they are looking at this as exploring incorporating it into the Delphi way of doing things. So you'll create UIs the Delphi way, drag and dropping controls, and then behind the scenes, hopefully, we can then support WinUI 3. Right now, for me, it's still a long way away from working. But if you want to try this out, go to Get It Packet Manager, and in the search bar that you can see at the top of that graphic, just type in WinUI and then click on the WinUI 3 demo. Now, if you're going to do it the easy way, and I really do think that you're on this webinar to talk about doing it the easy way, the easiest way of doing it is via VCL or FireMonkey FMX. If you're going to try and be truly Windows 11 friendly, then, and I'm sorry to say this, VCL is the better option. FireMonkey is the pretty option that will give you something that is emulating the controls, but overall, VCL is close to the metal. It really is an authentic Windows 11 experience. Whereas FireMonkey has got the advantage that if you design a FireMonkey app, you can then, with a couple of clicks, get the thing working on Mac OS and looking very similar. Have it working on iOS with the appropriate view setup, and on Android, and even with the FMX for Linux, you can have it running on a Linux box as well. So FireMonkey has got some very good strengths about its cross-platform capabilities, but because it is cross-platform, it is having to make a few allowances for moving from one machine to another and one operating system to another, whereas VCL is Windows only, and it's very much tied to what Windows can and can't do. Because of that, the VCL inherits a lot of the functionality that's supplied by the Windows operating system and the built-in SDKs and DLLs that come with it. Delphi 11 Alexandria, the latest version at the time of doing this webinar, is the best choice because that's the most recent and includes all of the bits and bobs that you would need. And also there's some new Delphi styles added as well specifically, which are made to make your VCL and your FMX apps, I think there's an FMX version, look more Windows 11 like. Those VCL styles, you can go in again into Get It, and I'm going to keep saying that quite a lot because Get It in Alexandria is all new and singing and dancing and lots of improvements in there. But if you just type in Windows 11, it will then search for the VCL styles, and you can choose VCL style Windows 11 Dark 1.0 and Windows 11 Light 1.0. The 1.0 is a hint that there's going to be newer versions at some point, I'm sure. But what that will do is that will immediately add a visual look and feel to your programs to make them fit in a bit more with you know, dark mode and light mode. And dark mode and light mode, if you're going to be producing applications that look like they belong on Windows, then you really do have to support dark mode. Sorry, if it's a problem for you, I'm afraid you're going to have to bite the bullet sooner or later and work that way. The other thing that comes with Windows 11, and it's a subtle but noticeable feature, and I'm going to demo this in a moment. I will stop talking and we'll show some apps and show some demos. But another thing is the controlling rounded corners. Now on Windows 11, if you run an application, the corners of the dialog boxes and the forms are rounded. There's 3 types of rounding, which I'll show you in the demo app. There's regular rounding, which is, you know, 40-something degree rounding. And you definitely, when you can see them, you can see they're starting to be rounded off. And then there's a smaller rounding, which is like 20-odd degree rounding. And that's for dialog boxes and toolbars and things like that. And then you can turn them off as well. By default, they're on, but you can turn them off using some code from this blog post here. If you don't go to the blogs.embarcadero.com, then you're missing out because there's a lot of stuff there. But as I said, these links are all in the handout later. But turning rounded corners off and on, by default, the VCL is going to support them. But if you want, if there's a screen design that you've got that's got a non-standard caption bar, let's say it's a small tool-like window, you want to turn those corners off or make them smaller. Because otherwise, if you've got a very small caption height, particularly with some of the styles, you can end up with icons and text being clipped off and stuff like that, because the rounding doesn't know. It's just rounding off what's known as the non-client area, the title bar. Other specific things, as I just mentioned, is supporting dark mode. It's not difficult. There is actually a blog post again on the blog. This one's actually written by me, in fact the other one was as well, that tells you how to incorporate the appropriate styles to support light mode and dark mode. Marco has got a post as well where he includes a form helper, so that if you include that unit in, whenever you've got a form, you can just say my form dot apply dark mode. I forget exactly what he says, and it will just do it. My version actually uses a unit that you can include, and then you can specifically call some code to say, I want to support dark mode, I want to support light mode, or I want to support a custom mode. With most applications now, the common user paradigm is to say, I want to have dark mode, light mode, or the default. And the default is if your Windows is running light mode, then it will show the light mode theme. If your Windows is running dark mode, then it will show the dark mode theme. I'll stop for a second because I've got a question here which I want to answer because I've got a good reason for this. Per Lindholt says, why dark mode when it's bad for the eyes? Black text on white gives the best readable as pupils, then is small. I'm afraid to say you're wrong, and the reason that you're wrong is because I actually have a condition in my eyes where I have quite significant floaters. These are the little wispy thread-like things that float in front of your eyes. I have a very poor eyesight. With glasses I can see normally, but my prescription is -9, and those of you that know that means that without my glasses I may as well have a guide dog or something. I'm pretty short-sighted. It's not safe for me to do anything without my glasses on. Now that extra high prescription means that the threads or the floaters are quite pronounced, and that can actually be a problem when looking at a light background. So with a light background, I can see those floaters, and it actually, on certain font sizes, like the font size where it says blogs at the bottom there, the floaters are thick enough that they can obscure the text and make it difficult to read the text. Now on dark mode, where the white text is coming up, I do not notice the floaters at all. And the same as if you're in a dark room. Some people have maxilla, I forget what it's called now. Anyway, there's a degenerative condition of the back of the eye, and with that, bright lights can be a real problem for them, and so they prefer dark areas with light screens. so they want light mode, but other people have the opposite problem and they need a dark screen as well. So actually, yes, you know, I can see what you're saying, Per, but I disagree. Dark mode is essential for usability. And if you're in Europe, there are actually some laws now about catering for people with different abilities and different, we would call them disabilities, but differently abled is probably the more politically correct word. But dark mode and light mode, not just for the fun of it.
And also, I will add something here. Dark mode. So on paper, white paper with black text is ideal. But when you're looking at a screen, a white screen with black text means you have a lot more light hitting your eyes. And so if you're working, if it's you're in a darker room or you've been on a computer for a long time, that bright light causes more eye fatigue, whereas a dark UI causes less eye fatigue. And so it can be both a preference thing, or for certain people that, you know, they need it, or if you've been on the computer for a longer period of time, it can reduce eye fatigue. So again, it comes down to having a nice option. For some people, it's a bigger deal than others.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I agree. And in fact, Jim, you know, I'm old enough to have been a programmer in the early 80s. and we were COBOL programmers back in those days because, you know, that was what was around. And all the monitors which were connected to these time sharing systems were black screens with amber text or green text. And a lot of money was spent on the research to decide what colors to have those. They're slightly hampered by what kind of phosphor they could use to make the text show up, but they were all dark screens with light text. So it's only really with the advent of good, you know, LCD panels and stuff like that we all started swapping towards having light screens and stuff like that. But it's horses for courses. Some people hate dark mode. I totally get it and find it difficult, and some people prefer light mode. There are good reasons for supporting one or the other. So, and then when we're going to talk about adding the wow factor. So the wow factor really is some of the cool stuff that you can do with Delphi and also with Windows 10 and Windows 11. Now, the thing that comes along with Windows 10 and Windows 11 is a thing called the Fluent UI. I'm sure a lot of you know about this for now, but for those of you that don't, Fluent UI is where those backgrounds to the forms are semi-transparent or slightly translucent, and they also have some very much a flatter scheme to the images, and they also use a different type of font. Skia UI is the standard font in Windows 10 and Windows 11. It's a non-sans, what's the word I'm looking for? Non-serif font. So it's sans serif, which means that you don't have lots of little extra twirly bits, and that's all for readability and things like that. Now, out of the box, there are some things you can do with FireMonkey and with the VCL that will emulate some of this behavior. You can make portions of your form transparent, and you can make portions of your form semi-transparent by some clever trickery and fills and things like that. And you can also pick the fonts and to make it look cool, and maybe get some third-party controls for the buttons and stuff like that, and also support things like the Font Awesome font set to get some of these graphics as well. However, that's the hard way of doing it. Instead, you could go to one of our third-party suppliers and called our Media Dev, and I've done a webinar about this particular product, but it bears talking about again, and that's a thing called style controls. I'm going to show you those in a moment as well. And what the style controls do is they basically provide a whole set of components that allow you to produce Fluent UI interfaces. So all of the stuff you see on there, this is only one of like 50 demos they've got. All of the things you see on there are controls that are built in and ready to go. They haven't included anything odd, no special graphics, no weirdness. If you probably doesn't show up very well on the webinar, but behind the back form there, that form is semi-translucent, so you can actually see through it. You know, that acrylic that you've heard of, that kind of very cool, slightly transparent textured background that looks like you're looking through a piece of textured acrylic. It does all that. It handles all that kind of stuff. It handles all the borders and all of the behavior on the menu. If you see the menu there where it says image, you see that little highlight along the left there, all done with the Almeida style controls. It's incredibly inexpensive, depending on what country you come from, but I can't remember how much he charges, but in US dollars, it's like $80 or something like that. If you're doing professional development, it's very much worth the investment just to see what you can do, if anything, with it. But we'll show you a demo about that in a moment. And the other thing you can do is everybody's favorite new project is the Skia for Delphi project. Okay, now we did talk about this recently at the 27th birthday webinar. Skia for Delphi is by a couple of brothers who manage this project at skiafordelphi.org. I'm not sure if they're on at the moment because I haven't got time to look at the list of participants, but we voted the Skia for Delphi project the remind me what it was, Jim. It was the Delphi Spirit of Delphi
Award. Yeah.
Yes. Spirit of Delphi 2021 award, and that was voted on by Embarcadero staff, not myself, for the project. And Dave Nottage was another guy as well. It was voted for his efforts towards Delphi. But Skia for Delphi, if you haven't met this project yet, first of all, I encourage you to go and look at the 27th birthday webinar and see some of it. But it is absolutely incredible. And the funniest thing I saw recently, because I actually contribute towards this project from time to time, I'm very friendly with the developers, Paolo and his brother. Someone was complaining the other day, and it's made me laugh. They said that very cool project was how their complaint started, very fast, makes their FireMonkey apps go an order of magnitude faster, like, you know, not just 10 times, but thousands of times faster. And they said, but I'm really unhappy because when I run this particular FMX FireMonkey application of mine, it only renders at 1,000 frames per second. And and he said when it's not full screen, then it renders at 10,000, I think, or 5,000 or something like that. And he said, but with regular FireMonkey, it renders at 200 frames per second. I thought, you know, you've got to be winning as a project if someone complains that the animations only render at 1,000 frames per second. You know, those guys are really onto something. But what the Skia project does is it will turbocharge your FireMonkey and VCL apps. It will add some capabilities that out of the box you can't do. One of them that's very useful is the ability to set a property in a FireMonkey app and say, I forget the exact flag, but it's basically say to use Skia globally. Once you set that flag, FireMonkey will use the Skia canvas for its rendering instead of the regular FireMonkey canvas. What this does is it gives you a massive boost in performance, and I mean massive. It is so noticeable that people always go, good grief, I can't believe it. It's like 150 times faster. Your mileage may vary, you know, it depends on what your app is doing, but turning this global flag on, and if that's the only thing you do with a Skia for Delphi project, it will make your FireMonkey apps go a lot quicker and the animations be smoother. But it also adds a number of other capabilities, not least of which is the ability to do right to left text on fonts in FireMonkey. So that is actually quite difficult to achieve most of the time. But let me just, see, now I've gone backwards when I didn't want to be. If you want to see what it can do for you, go and look at some of their projects. I've got a little demo app that I'm going to run in a moment anyway. But what I'm going to do now is close this down and move these out of the way because these are nothing to do with what we're doing. And the first things first, I want to show you some of the projects that we've got as examples. So the first thing that we talked about, just turn around so I face the microphone. This is not going to show up very clearly on the webinar, unfortunately, because of the streaming quality. But when you go to the replay, you might be able to see it a little bit better. But the default behavior in Windows 11 is this rounded corner. And I'm pointing to it now. I don't know whether it's clear, but that corner is rounded. Using just Delphi code, you can turn those corners off at will. Okay, so if you want that behavior to go away, it can go away. If you want it back on again, then you can turn it back on. And if you want to have the small rounded corners for those toolbars and things like that, you can do that. And now the Windows 11 small toolbar is there. This is a project you can download. It's open source. In fact, I wrote this one, but using code from Marco. But he's also got, I think, a form helper as well that he does it in. So that's the rounded corners, which is one of the things we talked about. The other thing is our media dev style controls. If you recall, we talked about the kind of things that can go on in the background. So if I pick something brightly colored, I'm going to pick something here. You should be able to see, and again, on the webinar, it's probably not going to show up very well, but if you see just about where the word about is, you should see that that is translucent. And it's you know, the kind of standard behavior that you get from something like calculator. So the Windows calculator, if I pick that up, say standard, actually, weirdly enough, that's not shown. How funny. The Windows 11 calculator doesn't use. Oh, well, okay. Well,
so it might be, some of them use that they only show the wallpaper through, but not other windows behind it. So you might move the Windows 11 down over your Embarcadero logo down there and see if it shows that through it.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I mean, the point is, everybody is probably familiar with it by now, but you can definitely, the yellow shows up a lot more, but underneath the word about, you can see it. So these controls, I've linked to them on the blog post as well, but it adds some, you know, functionality that's kind of not part of the standard VCL and FMX. You can do all of the things you could expect. It can also, where's their static controls? These graphics here, you can see the menu down the side with the little indicator line. These are all controllable as well. They've got lots and lots of different examples that do all sorts of different things. You can turn all of those features on and off. One of the things that Windows 11 does is, if I have the transparency turned on, I don't think, again, I probably chose a poor color background there, but as soon as I click away, the border disappears and the product stops, the form stops being opaque. If I go back on again, it will actually be transparent again. Again, it doesn't show up very well in a webinar, which is why I didn't really want to show those that demo, but you get the general gist of it. The other thing that we talked about as well was the Skia for Delphi. Sorry, actually, we'll come to that in a minute, but the ability to test dark mode and light mode. This, again, there's some example code for doing this. And this is all purely VCL and purely some code in there to do it. However, this code will work in FireMonkey as well, because FireMonkey is just an app, and all we're doing is we're checking a registry setting to see if this registry setting set. So at the moment, I'm running my Windows in light mode, and so it starts in light mode. If I click on dark mode, then it swaps to the Windows 11 dark theme, which we talked about in the slides, and I can go back again to light mode as well. So that's that. And then the other thing was the Skia for Delphi example. If I pull that up, lots and lots of features in here, and if you incorporate these in, it doesn't just have to be Windows 11, but any of the applications, you'll suddenly add a lot of very cool features. One of the things is the ability to show things like WebP graphics and SVG graphics. The SVG graphics SVG is a bit of a weird standard, really. Some of there are SVG components out there that do mostly work, and then there's some that sort of make a complete hash of it. I'm having trouble dragging my form over. Come on, there you go. But WebP, as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any other components at the moment that support WebP, but you will start coming across WebP. It's a bit like GIF or GIF, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I know there's a war out there about GIF and GIF, but I've always called it GIF because it's graphics interface format. But WebP is the kind of new replacement for that. WebP can do all sorts of things. You know, there's drawing animations of WebPs and various other bits and bobs. The most important things that it can do that are even cooler than that, though, are things like, let's have a look what we got. Things like this, very smooth. This doesn't ever show up in a webinar. I've shown this before, but what you can't see is an extremely smooth grad fill that moves around as I move my mouse. You know, there are all sorts of very, very cool demos in here. Now, the thing about Windows 11 is it's about adding visual wow factor to things. And if you use the VCL for the ability to point at the window and have the windows positioning come up, then that's good. This is an FMX app, and so it doesn't actually support that, but the VCL does. Again, very smooth animations, and you get these for free. That kind of upgrade to what you're doing with your FMX and FireMonkey apps is free. That means that when you're someone's saying here, does DAL Media support the nighttime mode? By that I think you mean where it dims. This is Roland asking this question: does our media control support nighttime mode? If by that you mean that the color changes to have a different yellow tint, which is what you seem to be saying there, I think that's actually to do with the way the color balances worked on the monitor. So I could be wrong, but I think that the apps don't do anything with that. Your app will just automatically look a different color.
Yeah, that's done at the Windows level, either by the OS or by a you can get add-ins that do it, but it's built into Windows 11 now, that it just adjusts the tint of everything on the screen.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was like, you know, going into the display and saying, oh, I want my display to draw in a different color or something like that. I mean, that's what I thought. But you know, a lot of this Skia for Delphi stuff that we have here is not really Windows 10 or Windows 11 specific, but all I'm saying is that there are lots of controls in here. There's only like 4 controls, I think, but the capabilities that you're adding to your apps is just takes it to a whole different level of functionality. And for those of you who haven't seen it, because I have to show you, but being little Star Trek geeks, we do have an application that's all using Skia for Delphi stuff, and I thought I could turn this off, but I can't remember how to do it. I can't. Oh, there you go. All of this that you see on the screen, like drawing fonts with custom fonts and drawing, you know, this is loading the fonts in automatically at runtime in a couple of seconds. Being able to do right to left text and animations that, like the Lottie animations, which I won't talk about now, but we'll go into in another webinar. But all of those capabilities are part of the Skia for Delphi stuff. It's a fantastic project. So really, that's the long and the short of it. I'm going to just.
There's a couple of questions, Ian. One is, what about different scaling? So if people change their scaling, usually like in high DPI, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So high DPI. Let me just go back here. High DPI. I forget whether it was 10.42, but with later versions of Delphi, high DPI is supported. the per monitor V2 was the great change to it. So in your applications, if you've got an application, in fact, I can show this. It's probably just as easy to pull up something like Rad Studio. Let's see.
If you go into a VCL project and look at the appearance, you can see that it lists high DPI styles versus.
Yeah. So if this is a VCL project. So if I go into options, and when it comes up, let's see, in appearance, and then is it in here? Was it an application?
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
Yeah.
Scroll to the top of the list to see those are high DPI optimized. So what that means is those styles have multiple levels of quality.
So the themes in this case, but in older versions of Delphi, I thought there was somewhere where you could actually turn that on and off. I think it's on by default. Is it now? I could be wrong, but
it is. I think it's under version info. Nope. Somewhere it's per monitor V2.
Yeah.
Go to the search and type per monitor V2 up at the top.
Yeah. Monitor.
Nope.
No. Oh well.
I'll find it. Let me see.
This is 11. We'll come back to that. The point is, with version before 11, for sure, if you went into here, it would come up and say for the application appearance, you could say high DPI per monitor V2. There are getting high DPI right is an art in itself, and you do need to have a relatively recent version of Delphi. If you're one of these people that's still using Delphi 7, stop. I know it's easy for me to say, but you know, you've missed out on so many things. There are quite a lot of people that say, oh, Delphi 7 was so stable. And, you know, when I go out and do contracts with people, I do come across quite a lot of people saying they're still sticking with an older version of Delphi, 2003 or something like that.
Kelly said it's under manifest.
Oh, it's in manifest, is it? There you go. I knew it was somewhere. So going to, I should have known that as well. So enable runtime themes. Well, yes, you want that. And then per monitor V2. You can also, if people don't know this as well, the other thing that you may want to do is tell the application to run as an administrator. Windows 11 has got a lot more integration, shall we say, with OneDrive and things like that. If you've got Microsoft Office 365 installed, you'll suddenly find your documents folder will want to live in the cloud somewhere, which is fine until you find a component manufacturer that installs in the cloud, or you put all your demos in the cloud or something, and then you've got two machines and they're both pointing at different areas, you know, for your components. So it can be a little bit problematic. Same with documents as well. But with the DPI awareness, with Delphi 11, you can set that DPI so that when you're designing a known DPI, a dots per inch resolution. You're going to have to, for Windows 11, assume that a lot of your users are going to be running something like 1920 by 1080. Nearly all machines that are sold at the moment are really kind of aimed in consumer language for the sales, so they describe it as a HD display, and by HD they're really saying 1920 by 1080,
or even 2K or 4K, which is
correct. I mean, I'm thinking of laptops, which are quite common, but you know, the days of having a 1024 by 768 screen are long gone, and in fact none of the apps that I work on now will support that. We actually now insist on 1920 by 1080. I think we support some slightly smaller heights, but the width certainly is that. The other thing, of course, is that font scaling plays into things as well, so that when you're designing your screens, you need to leave plenty of space between controls, so that when things are scaled up and down, that they don't all crunch up on each other. Most people with certain types of high-res screens have it at 125% font scaling. If I think I can do this on here, but if I choose display settings, which is going to come up on one of these screens somewhere, maybe it won't. Where did you go? Oh, here it is. It's behind my screens here. Hold on. So I've got a large screen in the middle, and I'm talking on this screen at the moment. And then you can say, oh, well, I want that screen to be scaled at some ridiculous scale. I've got it 100%, and that's 2560 by 480. So that's a 2K screen. Your apps are going to have to cope with that. Now, when it comes to your VCL apps, let me just find one that does it. It's not a VCL app. Where is a VCL app? Yeah, this is one. By default, later versions of the VCL, you see where I'm doing this? There's your little menu that I was talking about, which was a PowerToys feature from Microsoft PowerToys, but now is built into Windows 11. If I click on here, what will happen is it will make my app size to the left of the screen and then ask me to pick an app for the right hand side of the screen. I'm not going to do that because it's going to mess up my display, but this is functionality that's built in. If you're using later versions of Delphi VCL, it actually will do that by default. I didn't do anything in this app to support that, it just does it. So in terms of the frameworks and things like that, let's just run a slideshow again. We're really talking about the best framework at this moment in time for Windows 11 is a VCL. It's, most of you out there as developers are probably using VCL or have used VCL. Using the VCL, you get a lot of the side effects of Windows 11, the pretty application resizing menus and all the rest of it for free. If you want to go the whole hog and have that kind of fluent UI transparent background, then go to the Almedia Dev controls for a relatively low amount of money, and they have a very good demo there as well, and a demonstration trial package, so you can try it out for yourself. You can add all of the fluent UI things that you need to put in your app. You can emulate it in another way, and some of our other webinars have talked about that, and I've shown how to emulate it in FireMonkey. There's a white paper, if you go to the blog and download the white paper, where we compare some of the bigger frameworks like Electron, where some of the MVPs, me being one of them, wrote some apps in Delphi compared to Electron. Excuse me. We were able to emulate Fluent UI in one of the apps and then do the full Fluent UI with the Almedia style controls, and also do a cross-platform app in FireMonkey, and also using TMS Web Core, use a web app and a progressive web app, and just to round it off and be horrible to the competition, do an Electron app. We did all of that in around about 2 hours. So there are about 6 different versions of the app, compared to some .NET people and some Electron programmers. And I'm pleased to say, as Delphi programmers, we pretty much thrashed them in speed. So, there's nothing wrong with .NET. It's horses for courses, and C# obviously has got the same parent as Delphi, but use Delphi VCL and you're cooking on gas. If you want to have an upgrade in what's happening with your FireMonkey stuff, look at Skia for Delphi, and that's going to improve your speed. And really, that's kind of the long and short of it for here. Go to the blog post, which is on the thing here, tinyurl.com/win11bestui, or go to the link that Jim's put in the chat. How are we doing for time? Well, we've got 5 minutes. Most of the questions we've answered. People saying things like they like dark mode, they hate dark mode.
There's a question here about the Skia global. It's global use Skia set to true. It makes all your FireMonkey controls look better. And there was also a question about where to download your Star Trek GUI example, which I put the link in there for that as well.
Actually, yeah, there's a link there, but also if you go to the Skia for Delphi project, they have it in their samples because they asked me and I said yes. So the sample's in there. I updated it recently. The new Skia for Delphi 3 did things slightly differently. So I've updated it. With the VCL, the animations are not transparent. If you're using FireMonkey, then they are transparent. And that's the main core difference that I found with Skia for Delphi 3. Yeah, nearly everything. Go to the blog and you'll find lots of links. But the blog post on there is good. I'll update it with some links and a replay later. I'm using Delphi 10.4 with some packages that do not yet have versions for Delphi 11. Should I wait, or is everything compatible and should work fine? That's Louis Gutierrez.
So everything is hard to say for sure.
Good question, isn't it?
Generally speaking, basically Delphi is very committed backwards compatibility. Honestly, that's one of the things I love about it. So usually things migrate fairly easily. There's been a couple of times where there were, like, for example, Unicode or 64-bit where there were some slight pain with migration, but yeah. I would expect it should migrate fairly easily. Generally, you're just going to need to update your anything that checks for certain versions of Delphi to recognize that it can work with 11.
I will say this as well. If you are a coder that has got XE3 or lower, then you may find that there are quite a lot of things that don't work because we started introducing things like anonymous functions and stuff like that, and earlier versions of Delphi just wouldn't understand those. And you know, generics and a few things like that work very differently. And also the later versions of Delphi, I'm a Delphi MVP. I'm going to try and encourage you to use, you know, the latest version of Delphi, obviously. But you know, reality is people use what they're comfortable with. And but when I've upgraded projects, going from something like Delphi 10.42, for example, to Delphi 11. It's mostly been okay. If you're using a lot of third-party components, then yes, you're going to have to go and see, are they really compatible? But you can always try. You can download a trial. The link was in the previous slide, actually. Go to the trial where it says embarcadero.com/products/RAD Studio/start for free. Download the 11 trial on a different machine. Or even on the same machine, and give it a go and see what happens. You know, that's probably the best way is suck it and see what happens. I think that's most of the questions, and we're running out of time as well, so we timed it just right. I think that's it. If you've got any other questions, follow me on Twitter. It's @punctuation. Long story why I've got that. I'm a writer amongst other things. Or email me at ian.barker@gmail.com, or you'll meet me in one of the conferences or something like that elsewhere. Okay. Thanks, says Louis. Yeah, thank you, Louis. Thanks everybody for coming. And we'll see you all next time. Is that right, Jen?
Yep, great. Actually, so next week we have the What's Coming in RAD Studio webinar. Definitely want to check that out with product management, talking about some of the improvements and future of our favorite development tools, Delphi, C++ Builder, and RAD Studio.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.